This is County Executive Steve Schuh. You're listening to the Maryland Crabs Podcast.
Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Frenay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Frenay.
It's the Maryland Crabs.
You didn't sing it. I'm proud of you.
I do not have a lot of joy in my heart, so I'm not singing anymore.
Yeah,
I get down this time of year.
Yeah, the weather is dark and everything else. We had fun last week.
We had a blast last week, and as a matter of fact, that's why it kind of sucks right now because I see no beers in front of me.
Nope.
And I did have a lot of fun last week. It was a lot of. I was just saying this off mic to John. Sometimes when we do an interview, it's you're here doing the interview, so when you're editing it, and it takes hours to edit. A single hour of a podcast, and sometimes
takes 20 minutes. Takes Tim hours.
Well, because I do it correctly. John's way is good too. But I was listening to this one, and I was laughing. It was because you can hear sobriety in the beginning, and at the end, it was just Uber time. So it was a lot of fun. It was loose. We got to do more of these. We really do. The interviews are great. We love them, but I like getting kind of letting the hair down and loosening up and drinking.
We should do that. Alex Pline had a great idea. He said...
He texted all hurt. He's like, I would have done that too. I like beer.
Yeah, but I mean, it would be, you just want to bring a random person in and just shoot the shit for
sort of like
an hour.
We could do like that podcast we're talking about, like Beautiful Anonymous. Instead of having a random person that we don't know call in, let's just grab a random person who's like walking their dog outside. Say, hey, come in and drink.
Have a seat.
Yeah, put these cans on. Actually, we're joking. We totally ought to do that.
That'd be funny. That would be funny. The Super Bowl is coming up on Sunday.
I know.
And it's like they got the real Super Bowl, the one that we're supposedly not. They always told me when I was at R&R that you weren't allowed to use the word Super Bowl because it's trademarked by the NFL and they would come slam you down.
We'll make a call to Scott McMullen. Say, hey, buddy, come get us out.
That's right. Bail us out, bud.
But going on to the real Super Bowl for a second, I am pulling hard for the Patriots. Well, here's why. My son's a Patriots fan, and I love him anyway. But I have a lot of Pittsburgh fans who are my friends on Facebook and Twitter, and they will never shut up about Pittsburgh. So every year, no matter who wins, they post about their 6 Super Bowl wins, and it has nothing to do with them. So this would tie.
This will shut Pittsburgh up.
Yeah. So I am rooting not for the Patriots. I am rooting against Pittsburgh, just in general.
All right.
Across the board.
All right. I don't know whether I accept that, but that's okay.
But
there's another Super Bowl.
And we're going to talk about it because you owe Lee Hurt after calling her a middle-aged white woman, entitled white woman.
No, you called her.
No, I certainly did not.
I
most certainly did not. I would never do that because she intimidates me a little bit.
We're going to go to the tape.
We will, and it's not a tape, man.
We'll go. But the Super Bowl, it's SOUPER, and that is...
I love soup.
Yep. It's at the Heritage Baptist Church. It benefits the Lighthouse Shelter, and it is on Super Bowl Sunday. It's on Forest Drive. It's the low,
that big one that's on the right-hand side.
One-story brick building across...
well, it's right next to that. No, it's right next to what used to be the insurance people building. Like that.
Not quite that close, but yeah, it's up that. It's across from like the CVS and the Lido Pizza.
Oh, yeah.
And it goes from 11:30 to 1 o'clock. It is free to attend. They do ask for a donation, but they have all sorts of soup there, and they will have all sorts of luminaries. I know that they were trying to get Pat Sajak to serve, but he doesn't listen to WNAB when they were begging for that on WNAB.
Why would he? Only owns it.
Yeah. But typically the mayor will be there. I know Mike Bush is there an awful lot, and they serve the soup to everybody. They offer a donation, and that goes directly to the Lighthouse Shelter. It's called the Soup Bowl. And it's the 11th year they've done it. And Chef Zachary Pope is the guy I don't know that he's the guy behind it, but he's the chef that's been there for at least the last 5 or 6 years anyhow. And he always comes up with some really good soups and everything else. So if you've got something to do for a pregame on the Super Bowl, go to the Soup.
We got to get Pat Sajak on the podcast. He would do it. He's like super conservative now. Like he is.
Oh, yeah.
Like
I bet he listens.
No, yeah, probably. Most likely.
Yeah. Hey, Pat, Leslie, give us a call.
Yeah, he just lives just over in Severna Park.
Yep. The other thing you want to talk about, Ignite, is coming up.
Ignite, that is, what's the date? This is the 12th?
Yep, the 12th.
February 12th.
Monday the 12th.
Over at Maryland Hall.
And they've got the large auditorium this year as opposed to the basement like they had last year.
Because last year in the basement, it was really cool. It was it had that beatnik kind of feel. So I expected everyone to snap instead of clap. But it was standing room only. And I know that because I forgot to get tickets and they hooked me up. But it was like we were packed in there.
And they had I'm sure they had the plastic chairs in there. So it was like uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it was like really hot for winter. But it was a really good time. So, we talked about this before. What it is basically you get 20 slides on a PowerPoint in 5 minutes. And the slides are timed out automatically so that if you mess up, the slides will get ahead of you or you'll get ahead of the slides. But it's on any topic. So last year they had one on sailing. They had one on race relations. It's just completely random. You can do whatever you want. I think they had about a dozen people who entered this year, I believe, something like that. So it's great. It's a great event. So you go to igniteannapolis.com, I believe, right? And Is that where you are now? Because John is he's either texting Teresa or he's looking up the site. But it is a really cool event, and if you go this year, you really ought to consider about doing it next year because the people who did it were kind of exhilarated afterwards, and it was really wild.
And actually, they've got a good bunch of speakers, and they've got, I think, 15 speakers this year.
They had about 10 or 12 last year, I think.
And they've got Bria Barksdale. I don't know who that is.
It's a good name.
Victoria Bruce, and she is the founder and editor of the Arundel Patriot. She also... I don't know whether she produced, wrote, or whatever, the movie Pip and Zastro, about Pip Moyer and Zastro.
I never saw that.
She did that as well.
Oh, did she? I didn't know that.
Cynthia Cruz and Jennifer Godinez, Krista Hassenkopf, Sylvia Henderson, Chrissy Holt, who is running for Senate for District 30. She's running against Sarah Elfreth.
Yep.
And John Astle, if he runs again, and Wesley Huey, Jeff Huntington, and Julia Gibb. Future History Now. Jeff Huntington is the guy that painted the tsunami mural.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And his wife. Incredible artist, and they've got some great stories. They just got back from India, so they may have some stories on that. Gary Jobson, sailor, ESPN commentator.
I think he might have done it last year, too.
I don't know whether Gary did it or not. He may be talking about the Sailing Hall of Fame, which is not hanging out here anymore.
No. Well, they had their shot.
Jim Keeney, don't know who that is. Suzanne Martin, Connor McManus, Matt Puglisi.
Connor McManus. There can be only one.
Levante Santos,
that's a
Lisa
Highlander reference.
Spalletta, Liz Thibodeau, and she's a big creative. She had Take 4 Media or Take
One
up there on Forest Drive.
Yeah, next to El Cabrito.
And
I could use some El Cabrito right now.
Nicole Weaver and Mary Grace Falwell. So these people get 5 minutes, 20 slides, and
it's automatically timed.
And you got to wing it.
Yeah, it's a great event. It really is cool. So I'd encourage you to go on and get the tickets because it sold out last year. Now they have the bigger space, so that's
right.
Really
they've got
good.
about 800 tickets, so I don't know that it'll sell out.
Fine,
but get it. I got mine today.
Yeah, I got to get that. It's a lot of fun. It's on a Monday night. That's the only thing for me. I'm like,
Absolutely do. Well, I'll tell you what. We're talking to County Executive Steve Schuh because he ran out on us last time.
Yeah, he had
to go see like Governor Hogan or something.
And we talked to him for 20 minutes and he had to run. So he promised he'd come back and he came back.
Yes, he did. And I would say there's not I came back.
Yeah.
You didn't come back.
Yeah, I have a full plate lately, but we'll take care of that.
So what we're going to do is we're going to get right into it with County Executive Steve Schuh. We're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the county, a little bit about his election that is coming up. We'll talk about that a little bit when we come back.
And I'll listen and pick it apart.
I'm Sean O'Neill, your local RBC Wealth Management Advisor. More than likely, the primary reason you save and invest is to achieve your life goals while ensuring your long-term financial well-being. But before you can determine your preparedness towards your goals, you need long-term answers to important questions about how much money you need, where it will come from, and how long it will last. RBC Wealth Plan, a new industry-leading tool, is now available to help answer these questions and develop your personal plan using a conversational approach. With RBC Wealth Plan, we can create a personal analysis based on these unique goals while offering you the ability to weigh certain decisions and determine what's best for you and your family. Call me, Sean O'Neill, today at 410-573-6723 for a complimentary consultation.
RBC Wealth Management, a division of RBC Capital Markets, LLC. Member NYSE, FINRA, and SIPC.
And we are up on the 4th floor of the Arundel Center again here in downtown Annapolis with County Executive Steve Schuh. How are you today?
Good morning. Thank you for having me, John.
Well, I didn't have you. You had me. We're here in your office, and so we're...
Well, thanks for coming over.
So you invited us here, but we got cut short a little bit the last time we talked because some guy named Hogan called and said you had to go stand on a bridge and cut the project to widen the Severn River Bridge, which is under budget. It is ahead of schedule, and it hasn't been quite the nightmare that everybody anticipated.
No, and it's going to be a big help.
Hopefully that will be a big help. I remember when
Forest Drive got widened. I think it was under County Executive Leopold, that little bit. And everyone was saying, oh, it's never going to work. It's never going to work. And it worked beautifully once they got the pole that was stuck in the middle. Verizon had a pole like in the middle of a lane that took them like 2 years to get out to get the right of ways to do it. But I think anything will help on that. I mean, even if you need to reduce the speed of the bridge and have people just take a little bit more care. But that's, guys, what a choke point for the county. Yep. That's for sure.
That's one of several choke points. There's another on Route 3. There are a lot of problems out in West County around Fort Meade. The state has, based on our requests, acknowledged those problems and is going to be devoting very substantial dollars. Almost every single problem, interestingly, with roads in Anne Arundel County in terms of congestion focuses on the state roads.
On the state roads?
Yeah, it's almost all state roads.
Can you tell me what the hell happens to 97 North every single day?
Great example. It's because 97 has not been widened in all of these decades. It is at the top of our list of requests to the state for improvements, and it is among
that drives me crazy. That bottleneck right there at 50 to 97, it backs all the way up to the mall, and then you get on 97 about a half a mile, and it's wide open.
It opens right up.
It's wide open. It's crazy. But what we wanted to sort of continue what we were talking about a couple months ago, and get into some of the things that we didn't really have time to do. Things have changed a little bit. We've got Vice President. We've got President Trump in Washington, who's keeping everybody on their toes. To see you there.
You could say that.
And, you have somewhat distanced yourself from him. Obviously, you're a Republican, but, as did Governor Hogan. I mean, it was, my focus is on running the state. And while you tend to be in a red county, the state is a blue state for the most part. And we can probably argue that a little bit back and forth. But what's it like to be what do you have to do to be a Republican in Maryland? Especially now when you see people that are trying to, going into elections as you are, Congress, they're just trying to offset themselves, if not distance themselves from the president. I mean, does it even have an impact when it comes here?
The federal government and Anne Arundel County don't have a lot of interaction on any kind of day-to-day basis. There are certain areas, certain projects where we do rely on federal assistance, road construction projects, land issues like the dairy farm. There are a handful of issues where we do reach out to our congressional delegations. I don't recall ever having had to reach out to the executive branch, which obviously answers to the president. All of our work with the federal government tends to focus on interaction with our congressional delegations. So we are in very regular communication with Anthony Brown, with Congressman Hoyer, Dutch Ruppersberger, and they have all been incredibly responsive. Met recently with the staff of new Senator Van Hollen, and they are very enthusiastic about working with us. So I feel really good about our working relationship with the federal government on the rare occasions where we need to. We in Anne Arundel County have our own strategy, what is we think best for Anne Arundel County. We're not trying to copycat things that are going on in Washington. Most of what goes on in Washington is not all that.
So there's no shutdown on Friday?
There is no shutdown on Friday.
Well, talking about copycatting on federal policies and whatnot, I wanted to touch base a little bit on immigration here. And you have established a program at the Ordnance Road facility up in Glen Burnie, where an unused portion of the facility has the potential to be used to house ICE detainees. And I think I'm a little bit confused as to what this program is.
Sure.
What is this program? I mean, we're not sending county police officers or county correction officers out knocking on doors demanding people's papers?
Absolutely not. I think it's very important for everyone to understand that we do not involve our community police or sheriff's deputies in any way in immigration enforcement out in the community. All of our efforts are focused in the jail. And that is consistent with the basic operating principles that we have in our administration. We welcome immigrants. We believe immigrants are a source of strength and critical to our future here in Anne Arundel County. But we believe people should come into our country legally, and that people who are not in our country legally should return to their country of origin and apply for legal entry to the United States. It is not practical to round up and remove millions and millions of people from the United States, and we think in particular specific groups of illegal immigrants like what they call the DACA kids, which are children that were brought here against their own volition and have lived here for 20-odd years now. They are, for all intents and purposes, Americans. They've lost any connection to their country of origin. So I do applaud federal efforts to put those folks on a legal path to citizenship. Similarly, with people under temporary protected status, there's certain categories of Haitians and El Salvadorians and others who have been, again, in the country so long now under temporary protected status because of civil strife in their own countries that they've lost all connection to their country of origin. There's no way they can go back.
Well, there was a story I read about a doctor, I think he was in Michigan, he's mid-40s. His parents emigrated from, I think, Poland. And he was rounded up and arrested because of somebody had a misdemeanor back when he was a child, a teen. And he's, a well-respected doctor, an emergency room doctor, and they're trying to figure out what to do on that. And he was a DACA kid. His parents came in, presumably illegally, had the child, and the child has been an American. But
he had a criminal record?
Again, it was misdemeanors, like a trespassing or something like that when he was a kid, or maybe shoplifting. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, I can't comment on that specific case. I'm not familiar with it, but I do believe that a major priority should be placed on deporting illegal immigrants who have committed other serious crimes, and that's why our efforts are focused in the jails. So we are doing two things in the jails. One is the program you mentioned. We have leased an empty wing of our jail to Homeland Security so that they can house illegal immigrants who are already in the process of deportation because they have been adjudicated and are meriting deportation. The other program we have is a component of the larger 287G federal program whereby some of our jail personnel have been trained on how to properly interview inmates to determine their immigration status. And
now, that would be an inmate that is currently housed that the police may have picked up on an assault charge or something like that.
Right. So they're in jail for some other crime, not for immigration reasons, because we don't pick people up for immigration reasons. That's not our business. That's the federal government's issue. We receive people in the jail because they've committed some other crime, robbery, burglary, rape, whatever they've done. We interview them. If they are determined to be in the country illegally, then after their term of confinement for the other crime, once they've completed their time in jail for that crime, they will then be referred to Homeland Security, to ICE for deportation. And sometimes
that's
the federal government will, sometimes they won't deport. They take them case by case.
So that's a decision on ICE's part there.
That's right. We just make a referral.
I should probably say ICE with a space there, not ISIS. ISIS has nothing to do with
it. That's a different terrorist group. So it's case by case.
So if somebody has been arrested for an assault, they've been sentenced, they've gone through the court system here in Anne Arundel County through the circuit court, and they've been sentenced to 60 days in jail or whatever it may be. The corrections officers that are there now, through their interaction with them or interviews and whatnot, will be able to determine or potentially determine their immigration status.
Correct.
At that point, then, they figure, okay, we've committed a serious enough crime to land ourselves in jail. We feel that we're looking to deport them. And then we would call ICE and say, hey, we've got this guy. And then ICE takes it from there.
We don't make any determination about whether a person should be deported or not. We just simply let the federal authorities know that this inmate
we believe is not
in the country illegally. Right. And then they make their own determinations. ICE and Homeland Security have their own priority order of people who need to be deported, people who should stay, and so they routinely issue deferrals and enable people to stay. It's not like automatic removal. It's case by case.
So the Latino and Hispanic population that we have, which is burgeoning here in the county, do they need to be concerned? We're the ones that need to be concerned about.
They certainly don't need to be concerned about Anne Arundel County police or sheriff's deputies enforcing immigration law. And they know that. We have reached out very aggressively to our minority communities, our immigrant communities, particularly the Hispanic community, and made it very clear that they have nothing to be concerned about. And that's important because we want our police to have very strong working relationships with all our minority communities, especially the immigrant and Hispanic communities, because public safety will break down if those relationships break down.
Sure, we've got the huge issue with, well, not necessarily huge, but with MS-13, with the gangs and stuff
Right.
like that that's going on there, and you need to have the communication from law-abiding immigrant community.
And I will tell you, a very, very large percentage of MS-13 members are in this country illegally. And the people who are suffering most from the presence of MS-13 are our own Hispanic communities, and they want those criminals out of this country just as much as everyone else wants them out.
Now, do you know whether an immigration status show up on, if I get stopped by a cop for blowing a stop sign or something like that, if I am wanted per se for an immigration violation on the federal level, does that show up, do you know, on a traffic? I mean, so...
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, so essentially...
That would put our police officer in a position of immigration enforcement role, and that's not what they do.
Okay.
We don't allow that.
So if I am
absolutely against policy.
If I am running from immigration for whatever reason, and I am pulled over for speeding or mugging somebody or whatever it may be, that's what I'm charged for: speeding or mugging somebody.
You'll be charged with mugging.
Right.
You'll be put in the jail, and you'll be interviewed. And if they figure out that you're in the country illegally,
then it goes on to that position. Okay.
Right.
So the typical Hispanic, the typical Latino that is law-abiding, that's here, perhaps legally or illegally, and I don't necessarily want to use the term illegally, but I mean just without the proper paperwork, doesn't have anything to worry about.
That's correct.
From a county level.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's, I want to underscore, that's really critically important policy, because public safety depends on strong working relationships between the members of our public safety departments and the communities they serve. We cannot, under any circumstance, allow those relationships to break down. And if you involve your police or sheriff's deputies in immigration enforcement, those relationships evaporate. And then we can't enforce the law, because then people are afraid to call us. They won't let us know that there's a criminal in their midst, that someone's committed a crime, that they know the identity of a criminal.
And then they're just either dealing with it themselves or ignoring it.
Or being victimized.
Or being victim
is
of
really
it.
what happens.
Right.
Because then these criminals prey on those communities because they know they're above the law.
Right. Well, I think one thing that you'd mentioned is as far as having the relationship between the community and the police or law enforcement, and I think that we're fortunate both here in Annapolis and Anne Arundel County that generally we have a very good level of trust between law enforcement and the community.
We do.
I mean, we don't have the issues that Baltimore City is facing. I mean, I had a discussion with Commissioner Davis before he was let go from there, and I think that goes a long way. I mean, sure that we've got some bad apples. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago there was some rogue officer that was asking girls to expose themselves for and I don't want to make light of that, but it happens. You weed them out and you try to put in policies in place. And one policy that you instituted middle of last year, was the safe stations, which is a no questions asked, come in and get help if you are addicted. And that I'm looking at the referrals from the police department that just came out on January 24th. So far in January, there have been 66 referrals to the Safe Stations program.
Safe Stations has been incredibly effective. And by the way, thank you for giving me credit for it, but I can't take credit. It was the brainchild of Alan Graves. Safe Stations is exactly as you described it.
Fire
Alan
department?
Graves of the fire department conceived of it. And under that program, each of our fire stations and police stations, but the police stations have not proven to be attractive to people who are suffering from drug addiction and want help. They prefer to go to a fire station, feel safer. But under the program, a person can present him or herself to a fire station, ask for help, no questions asked, nobody gets in trouble. They just get connected to the help that they need through our crisis response system. We get them into treatment.
So what type of help? I mean, I guess it depends on how they present themselves. If I walk in and say, "Hey, I've got a problem. I'm taking heroin. I'm taking whatever," that may be referring into a counseling type of a situation.
Well, the first step is a medical evaluation.
Okay.
So they make sure you're not suffering from a heart attack or a stroke or anything like that.
Right.
If there is a medical issue outside of addiction problems,
in the ambulance into the hospital.
Ambulance to the hospital.
Right.
If it's just drug related and they're ready for help, then the fire department alerts crisis response. Crisis response is part of our mental health agency, which has responsibility for providing mental health and behavioral health services in Arundel County. They send a team, like a SWAT team, to that fire station, lickety-split. They arrive and they assess the person, and then they put them into our program for treatment. So depending upon the person's situation, they may have to go to detox.
Okay.
They may go to counseling. They may go to a 12-step program, but that assessment's made and determinations are made as to what the best program is for that person based on
And
their
if they're in an
situation.
active overdose situation, then they're getting the Naxalone and off to the hospital or wherever
Correct.
it needs to be. Now, the crisis response team, that's headed by what, Jen Corbin?
Yes.
And how big is this team? And I mean, okay, so if I presented myself to a safe stations, what's the time frame, would you say, in minutes till I am effectively receiving some sign of non-emergency treatment? I come in, they've evaluated me, they said yes, they've called the crisis response team, they've come out, and now I'm speaking with a counselor. Is that?
It's probably just a matter of minutes. It's not unusual to have crisis response responding literally a minute or two after the ambulances have arrived to a person's home after an overdose situation.
Do you know whether they routinely get dispatched when the EMS is dispatched for a heroin overdose or an overdose?
Only if we know it's an overdose situation. So if the call
my
for
kid just overdosed on,
then they are immediately dispatched. Otherwise, the dispatch happens when the EMTs sort it out and realize what's going on. So then you'd be adding another 10 or 15 minutes.
When did the safe stations come into play? That came in
April.
And there were 385 referrals through the safe stations program last year.
Actually, more than that, 500.
Oh,
We've had,
was there 500?
I'm sorry, we've had 500 so far since last April.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm just looking at 385 from 2017 on this fire department report, and at 66, that's just put that in perspective.
Yeah, we crossed over 500 just a few days ago. It's really very encouraging. And the vast majority of them have, sadly, some of them say, no, I'm having second thoughts. I don't want help after all, and they leave. But the vast majority of them go into services and are getting their lives back. It's one of the reasons I'm optimistic that we're going to prevail here.
Well, it is. I mean, I think 66 people in 24 days, just to put that in perspective, that's 2 per day.
Yeah.
That are actively going to a fire station or a police station and seeking help.
Well, and the good news, another aspect of that is finally the number of people checking into safe stations is exceeding the number of people who are overdosing on a daily basis, and far exceeding the number of fatalities. We had 155 fatalities last year.
Right. And the fatalities I'm looking at, so far this year to date, and again, January is a very short little window to take a look in, but we've had 10 fatalities so far in the county, and that's up from 6 this time last year. However, the non-fatal overdoses are down.
Right.
And notably also significantly down are the heroin and other opioid arrests. So it doesn't appear that we are arresting our way out of this, which we may have been doing in 2016 and 2017 and earlier. I'm just looking at some of the arrest numbers of people that are arrested for.
Right.
So that's a good thing. I mean, with safe stations, here's that we're looking to get people help.
Exactly. Our approach to police work has evolved over the past couple of years. We are not trying to arrest and put addicts in jail. We're trying to get addicts into treatment. When it comes to dealers, it's another story. We are raining hellfire down on the dealers in this county. And
well, the county the police have charged 2, I believe, in the county with manslaughter.
Right.
For providing that. And
that's a fancy name for murder.
Yeah. It's just not premeditated. They didn't wake up and say, "Hey, I'm going to kill this guy." And Commissioner Davis had said that one of the greatest tools for fighting that is the cell phone. He said you look at the cell phone, and typically the last person they texted or called was their dealer, and then you just follow the trails and you get it there. And we have not seen any kind of verdicts returned on any of those cases that we filed yet. And I'm following that pretty closely because I think that's going to really send a strong message as you look through where the issues are. I mean, and typically it's North County, the Glen Burnie, Brooklyn Park area, and the Annapolis area is where most of the overdoses are happening.
Those are the big concentrations, but those are also the big population centers. But if you look at a scatter plot of where the overdoses and fatalities are, they're everywhere. They're north, south, east, west.
It's not avoiding anything. And one thing when I was talking to Angel Trainer, and we just sort of dawned on me, it was if you're a starving person and you walk into McDonald's and they give you a burger, you're going to eat it. You're not going home. You're not setting the table. You're not,
right.
You're going to eat it where you buy it. So I mean, and obviously, and that probably makes sense with what the police have told me, is that the concentration of the dealing is going on in North County as well as in the sort of general Annapolis,
That's correct.
Edgewater area. Has the county upped any kind of enforcement or any kind of resources in those areas specifically to combat the drug selling?
We have dramatically increased our enforcement efforts against drug dealers. That's what I meant when I said we were raining hellfire down on them. And we're doing that in very close collaboration with the Annapolis City Police Department. They have been great partners. We are working hand in glove with them, and I think having very, very good outcomes going after and breaking up these dealer networks.
I'll tell you, you'd mentioned that it's everywhere, and it's, I want to think that I didn't grow up in a huge sheltered life, but I've lived 50 years and I never knew anybody that had a problem with heroin. Anecdotally, you hear about it. You didn't hear about the deaths and dying. Right. And I will say in the last 3 years, I have 5 friends that have lost children.
Oh, my. Sorry to hear
one
that.
friend that lost a son June of last year, and his other child overdosed non-fatally on New Year's Eve of this year. So these are, and I'll show my white privilege for lack of a better term, but I mean, these are, middle-class working people. I know when we talked to Wes Adams, he said that it personally affected him. His brother or his brother-in-law, I don't remember which one.
It was brother-in-law.
Was an addict, and unfortunately, he passed a couple weeks after we spoke. I know we've been running a lot of your PSAs that I know Dave Abrams has sent us on the safe stations, on the heroin problem that we've got. Certainly the Not My Child video that's been produced by the county has been an award-winning thing. It's very powerful. And the Not My Child programs that are going around. And you can't go anywhere without seeing that. And if you have not seen it, this is just sort of a side note to anybody that's listening, go out and listen to this Not My Child program. You hear from parents of children who have died. You'll hear from addicts, people in recovery, as well as experts on how to get out of it. It's a very good program as far as education that you've presented. I mean, you're out in the schools, you're out in communities.
Libraries, homeowners associations, we're everywhere. We've done over 100 Not My Child presentations all over the county, and they have been very, very effective in getting the word out. Not My Child is both a program that runs an hour and a half, involves a video and a panel, and then public discussion. And yes, I would urge your listeners to be on the lookout for a Not My Child presentation in their area, and please attend. But Not My Child also refers to a video by the same name, Not My Child. And you can view that video. It's about 15 minutes long on YouTube, Not My Child, in Arundel County. And it will make your hair stand on end, I can assure you. And it will educate you about the nature of this problem.
Well, it's been, and heroin, opioid, any kind of drug abuse, it's everywhere. Doesn't discriminate whether you're black or you're white, whether you're rich or whether you're poor, male, female.
It's everybody. It's everybody.
And it does. And I think that, the county, as you guys have also filed suit against drug manufacturers, distributors, as well as doctors that have overprescribed. And I know, again, Wes Adams had told us when he had his back surgery that, the biggest warning they gave him as they gave him all sorts of opioids was, hey, it might make you constipated. And he said that was the only.
Well, the doctors were unaware of the danger of these drugs. The amount of overprescribing of opiates, things like oxycodone and Percocet in this country is incredible. Part of that we've learned is because of the actions and practices of the drug manufacturers and the distribution companies, as well as pill mill physicians. The manufacturers and distributors engaged in misleading marketing practices that made the physician community think that these drugs did not present any serious dangers. And they also used outrageous financial incentives and kickbacks to induce physicians to overprescribe. And that's why we've gotten to where we are today. Physicians prescribing 30 days worth of these drugs when 3 days would be plenty, and giving people a second refill, taking them out to 60 days, by which time they're fully addicted, and then unable to get refills, those people turn to street drugs.
What?
Oh, this will kill you. Listen to this. 80% of the people that we encounter in a drug overdose began their addiction journey with a legitimate prescription drug from a physician. In other words, a sports injury, a surgery, something like that, and they were prescribed legitimately Percocet or oxycodone and it was off to the races from there because of an overly large prescription.
80%.
80%, and that's probably low. So again, urge your listeners, if your doctor prescribes opiates, ask him if there are better alternatives. If he insists on opiates, if that's the right thing, and sometimes it is, get the shortest dose possible.
Make another trip back to the pharmacy.
Make another trip back if you have. Don't walk away with 30 or 60 days worth unless you are in a serious chronic pain situation. And when you're done using your prescription, if you don't think you need to use the whole prescription, discard of those drugs properly. Don't leave them in the medicine chest. That's how kids get them. That's how the plumber or the electrician will get them. Dispose of them.
Now, and as far as disposing of them, you can go into any, I know all the police stations. I know the Annapolis City Police Station, and I believe the firehouses all have the drug boxes.
Yes.
Where you can just dispose of them there as well. So
and we're working with retail drug outlets like CVS and Walgreens, asking them to install drop boxes to be able to dispose of these drugs more easily. When people go into the drugstore, they can just get rid of them there.
It makes sense. I know when I came out of Harbor Hospital with a knee surgery a couple of years ago, they gave me a whole cocktail of opiates and said, get ahead of the pain because it's going to be really bad. And I took a little bit of morphine, and it just made me feel bad. I felt tight in the chest. And I said, I just don't like the feeling, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know whether I'm an addictive type of a person or not.
Right.
So I said, no, I'm going to stick with the Tylenol for a little bit, and it wasn't that bad, thankfully.
You toughed it out.
And ended up doing it there.
That's the best thing. That's the best way.
But you talked about working with Annapolis and Annapolis City Police and everything else. I know the last time you were emphatic to say that the county wasn't taking over the police. I know Mayor Panelides at the time was saying no, there's no intent of merging the police. Now that we have, I'm looking at the notes here, the anti-Mike that won the election. That Mayor Panelides had lost the election, and Gavin Buckley is now the mayor of Annapolis. We've switched from Republican to Democrat. Is that going to change any of the dynamic? Because you did work very closely with Mayor Panelides, and you guys got a lot of stuff together. I mean, you were sharing resources down at Station 8 in Annapolis Neck. I know you've got business development or economic development, elections. There were several programs that we worked together. I mean, do you foresee that all continuing?
I do. I think Mayor Buckley is off to a terrific start. He and I have gotten together very regularly to discuss a whole range of issues, including some of the things we've discussed today, the gang situation, the opiate problem. He has a lot of great ideas for Annapolis City. We have a great working relationship, and I don't anticipate any deterioration in the working relationship between the two jurisdictions. I think he is committed, as Mike Panelides was, and I am, to keeping these two jurisdictions thriving by working as partners.
It's funny. I think Mayor Panelides had a very tough race on his hands as coming in as a Republican in primarily a Democratic town. And I had a conversation with him, and I said, you needed to be the outstanding best mayor the Democrats have ever seen. And he was a very good mayor.
He was a good mayor.
He was a very good mayor, and I'm not going to, there were no scandals. There was, economic development moved ahead, but it was just a tough road to hoe by the time he came down there.
It's a tough time to be a Republican in Annapolis and everywhere else, and that's because of what's going on in Washington. People don't like the tone of Washington. Even people who like the policies, if you can get through all the
rhetoric,
the noise and the sound and the fury, and just look at the policies. Even people who like the policies, people don't like name calling. They don't like braggadocio. They don't like a negative tone coming out of their elected officials. And what goes on in Washington is way above my pay grade. But we're trying to set an appropriate standard here of conduct, of cordiality, of working together, and doing the people's business.
All right. Well, you mentioned that I wasn't going to bring it up, but the Preserve Annapolis Now PAC that came out toward the end of Mayor Panelides' campaign with the and you, along with Delegate Kipke, were contributors to that PAC. And is that something that you regret at this point? I mean, I know at one point you said that you were asked to help participate, and certainly I think it can be argued that the negative mailings and the rhetoric that came out of that PAC certainly hurt the mayor more than it helped him.
I agree with that. I think the negativity of those mailers backfired. I do applaud the organizers, the officers of Preserve Annapolis for trying to fight the good fight. I think they had good motives. They love this town, and they want to preserve what's great about Annapolis. And in their view, their opponent in the race, the now mayor, was taking the was proposing to take the city in a direction that they didn't want to go. So but I do agree. I think it was the wrong tone, the wrong mailers at the wrong time. But that being said, I don't think anything could have saved Mike Panellides' candidacy. It's just the environment we're in today. People wanted to change. Mike Panellides did a very competent job as mayor. He was a good mayor, but he lost by very large margins, and so even in the absence of those mailers, I don't think there was any hope that he could have been reelected.
Speaking of just quick campaigns there, did you ever get your money back from Roy Moore?
I did. To his credit, I got my money back. I think we've heard the last of Roy Moore.
Oh. And his horse he rode in on.
And the horse he rode in on. Good riddance to that guy.
Well, you are looking, we just got out of an election in the city of Annapolis, and you are looking to an election in 2018 here. You're looking for a second term as Anne Arundel County executive. You're looking in 2014, I would say that you didn't really have, I don't think you had a candidate that was going against you that had his fire in his belly, and to run for this office, face it, no matter what office it is, whether it's this one or alderman or councilman, you've got to want it and you've got to have the fire in your belly to do it. And I don't think George Johnson really had that fire. He had been a sheriff for so long and DNR chief, I think, and I think he was state police chief at one point too. This time is a little bit different. You've drawn Stuart Pittman, who actually has contributed to your campaigns in the past. And he seems to have the fire in his belly. He's shown to be a admirable fundraiser, and in a month and a half, he's raised $200,000. I know obviously you've got some more because you've had some time going there. What do you think about the candidate in the election? What's your
Well, these are very different elections. The 2014 election was more fought at the primary election phase because at that time I was up against
an appointed
incumbent, Laura Newman, who was formidable, and we had to give everything we had to prevail in that race. George Johnson is a distinguished public servant. He has given close to, if not more than 30 years of service to various public safety departments here in the county and at the state level, most particularly as the sheriff of Anne Arundel County, where he did an outstanding job. George, I think, came into the race a little bit late. He may not. I can't comment on whether he had the fire in the belly, but these are hard races to enter late because it takes a lot of organization, a lot of fundraising, a lot of time.
Well, you went to that 2014 race like in 2001, 2.
Yeah, no, I probably started 2.5 years ahead of time working on it. I was a sitting delegate at the time, so I had my delegate duties to tend to, which I did. But I also spent what time I could on the early work to build an organization and to raise the funds we needed. But George conducted himself like a pro. We I think kept the race at a very professional level. We're personal friends and remain personal friends today. Oh, and you asked about Stuart Pittman. Stuart Pittman is a very competent and worthy opponent. He did have a good fundraising report. He raised over $100,000 in a relatively short period of time, so he's definitely on the map from a fundraising perspective. He is a nice guy. He and I have worked together on environmental legislation in the past, so he knows what he's doing in those areas. And I expect it to be a real election and a real choice.
Well, money alone doesn't buy an election or guarantee a win. By an election, that's not the right word I wanted, but it certainly doesn't guarantee a win. It certainly doesn't hurt. Obviously, Mike Panellides raised an incredible amount of money compared to Gavin Buckley or even to Senator Astle, for that matter.
Money does not win elections, and I can tell you that Mike Panellides could have spent another $1 million in his race, and it wouldn't have changed the outcome by a single vote.
Some people have said that the loss for Mayor Panellides was a referendum on Trump, and it's the Trump effect that's turning this over. I mean, it's hard to say because Annapolis tends to be a very Democratic town, but do you think that Annapolis was a bellwether for the 2018 elections?
I'm concerned about that. It wasn't just Annapolis. It was Frederick, Maryland. It was New Jersey. It was Virginia. So there were a lot of very concerning things. If you happen to be Republican, there were a lot of things about that last national election that were very, very alarming, and about the recent Annapolis election. So I think it's important that those Republicans like me, who I think have a good, solid game plan, we're not taking our marching orders from Washington, D.C. We're doing what we think's right for our own jurisdictions. Need to get the word out and need to energize our supporters. In this coming election, I expect our opponent to be backed by a lot of very highly energized people who are angry about President Trump.
Well, you've got a lot of that spin-off of the Women's March about a year ago today, and you've got the Surges, the Wises, the Indivisibles, and whatnot that are
right.
very, very vocal. I think you probably thank your blessing sometimes that you don't have to sit at the county council meetings and listen to time after time after time for, calling for the resignation of something that, the council to do something. And I've spoken about that before. Is that, yeah? I mean, it's. Do you think they're going to those splinter groups are going to be a problem
I think they're engaged. We see a lot of email traffic and Facebook traffic about their activities. They organize public events and town halls and discussions, and good for them. I mean, it's great, and that's what democracy is all about. And it's important that the more conservative and moderate elements of our community get just as energized and activated.
As a candidate, provided that you're invited to some of their town halls and whatnot, would you engage that? Would you welcome that to go out and talk to these folks? I mean, obviously, it's a stacked audience.
Yeah, I mean, we got to pick our shots. It's a big county, 580,000 people, and there are a lot of events going on each and every day where any of us can be. And we do not want to walk into a situation where we're being set up, where it's a sneak attack by our friends on the other side. I mean, this is a competitive sport we're in, and we've got to take each play as it comes over the course of the period.
Your tagline was making Anne Arundel County the best place to live, work, play.
You're close. Live, work, and start a business.
That's why you're the county executive and I'm not. But you've done pretty well. We've got Crofton High School is breaking ground, which is one of the key components of your campaign. We've made a big dent in some of the crime, some of the opioid overdose that we're getting.
We came in with a very straightforward 5-point plan to reduce taxes and fees, to improve the school system, to improve public safety, to reform county government, and to enhance our quality of life. And I do feel good that 3 years down the line, we have made really good progress in each of those 5 things. We have initiated the largest tax cut in county history and reduced property tax rates 3 times. We've now launched the largest school construction effort in the history of Anne Arundel County, including the school you just mentioned in Crofton, soon to be followed by Old Mill and followed after that by another West County school, which we desperately need. In terms of public safety, we have broken ground or are soon to break ground on the new police academy, a central booking facility. We've completely turned over all our police vehicles. They're now up to speed and modern. And we've added a lot of police positions to fight back against heroin dealers. And
you're up to dating the radio system as well, which is critical for the
That's
safety
a huge project and really, really important. Absolutely. Our government is working better than it has. In my lifetime, we're getting permits out the door, responding to people's calls for service better than we ever have. And the Quality of Life Initiative has been really, really successful. We have a major effort, $250 million effort, going on to improve the waterways in the county. We're building bike trails at a very high rate of speed so that we have a complete network of bike trails. We're opening...
That's self-serving. You're a biker.
I love bike riding. Wish I had more time to do it. We're opening canoe launches and kayak launches all over the county so people can access the water. We've opened up swimming beaches for the first time in decades so people can engage with the environment. I was visiting another potential park yesterday that I'm really excited about in South County. So we're looking to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to take full advantage of the natural beauty of this county, because I've lived here all my life. And I've traveled widely, and this is one of the most beautiful places on earth. And we want everybody to have an opportunity to interact with our natural environment.
Well, your work is done. What are you running for again? What's on the agenda? I mean, it sounds like you've accomplished. I mean, what do we look forward to for 4 more years if you're elected?
Well, our 5-point plan is coming to a close because I believe every executive, whether in government or business or the nonprofit world, needs to have a new plan on a regular basis. And the cycle in government is 4 years. In business, it's usually 5. But in government, it's 4 years. So we will be closing out our 5-point plan and launching a new plan. I'm not yet in a position to share with you the full scope of that plan, but I can tell you a couple things it will involve. One is land use. We are about to enter into the once every decade general development planning process. And that plan will determine how land is used, how it's developed, how it's preserved in this county for the next decade. And we are determined to pursue smart growth strategies that concentrate development and direct development to places that have infrastructure and to preserving our rural lands. We have some of the most beautiful rural agricultural lands anywhere in this country, and they have to be preserved. We are now at a unique point in history in this county. A lot of people don't realize this, but 49% of Anne Arundel County is in zoning categories that is developable or developed. 51% of Anne Arundel County is in zoning categories that is either rural or protected. And we are going to draw the line there. We are not going to allow that 49-51 line to be crossed in the next development plan. We're going to preserve the rural lands that we have.
All right. I know you've got to work with the county council. You have certainly to work with the legislature. If you had just a pie in the sky initiative, just Steve Schuh, this would be the greatest thing in the world for Steve Schuh to do for Anne Arundel County without any of the BS that you have to do to get it accomplished. What would it be? Do you have any idea?
I would say two things.
And Amazon's not coming here.
And it's not about me. I mean, it's about
I know
making
that.
our county a better place.
But it's about the county. What would you?
But I have my ideas about what I think this county needs, and I believe, number one, the county needs to dramatically increase the number of schools in this county. We have the largest average enrollment per high school of any jurisdiction in Maryland, and among the highest average enrollments in the entire country, because we have fallen so far behind in school construction, particularly at the high school level, but also at the middle school and elementary school level. So I would like to work with the next council and the next school board to accelerate dramatically our school construction efforts. We've made great progress so far. I mentioned a moment ago that we have launched the largest school construction effort in county history, and we have, but it's not enough. And the other is these land use challenges. I think we need to work very diligently to preserve our rural and protected lands. Anne Arundel County is the subject of a massive pincer movement emanating out of Baltimore, from Washington, D.C., and even Annapolis. Anne Arundel County is the focal point of potential future and development. And unless we are very resolute and determined, then that 5941 line will be breached, and we are going to see development proceeding in our pristine areas of the county. And I think that's just not the direction we want to go. We want to steer development to the areas where we have infrastructure, where we have public utilities and school capacity. We do not want to extend water and sewer utilities down into South County and start intensive development in that part of our county.
All right, you mentioned to talk about going in. This will be the last sort of bit that we've got going as we wrap up. But you had your eye on the county executive's office for quite some time, back when you were in the House of Delegates. By the way, do you miss the House of Delegates? Now when you've got a Republican governor, there's some very exciting initiatives that are moving through there. Do you miss being?
Well, I loved the House of Delegates, and my experience there was indispensable to my ability to carry out my duties as county executive. I could not imagine doing this job without prior public service as a delegate or a county councilman. Although no county executive has ever come out of the county council. Every county executive has come from the General Assembly, with the sole exception of Janet Owens. Yeah, Janet Owens is the only exception, but every other one was either a senator or a delegate. And I think the job requires that, because we have to work so closely with the state. I mean, I am in constant communication with the committee chairs in the House of Delegates and the Senate, with the Speaker himself. And we are very fortunate to have a speaker from Anne Arundel County. We're on opposite parties, but
Speaker
we
Bush has
both
been
put
wonderful
the county
for
first.
the county and just
It's been great. And it's
Annapolis
so
as well.
great to see his health coming back. Every time I see him, he looks better. It's really gratifying.
He's going to need it for the race.
He's going to have his work cut out for him. There are a number, I believe at least 4 people have come into that race, plus the speaker.
There's 3, and Delegate McMillan hasn't really said what he's
right, and
what
Delegate
he's
McMillan
doing there,
may decide to come in too.
So you had your eye on the county executive spot. Let's say you get elected for another 4 years. What's got Steve Schuh's eye for 2022?
I don't have any eye for 2022.
Nothing yet?
My goal is to get reelected in 2018.
Well, we can talk to you on November 12th of 2018 and see where that works out. Interesting, you said that no county executive has come out of the county council, and no mayor of Annapolis has ever gone on to a higher elected office.
Really? How interesting. I didn't know that.
Nope. They just get put into like closets and hidden and
Yeah.
and move on there. But it's I'll tell you, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thanks for having
Schuh,
me.
I appreciate it. Appreciate the insight. Good luck on the election. Congratulations on your accomplishments so far. Let's just keep working on these heroin numbers, man. It's encouraging, but it's still discouraging to see that they're even as high as they are. But if nothing else that you can hang your hat on, and I'll hang the hat too as well, but it's the numbers that are coming out of the police and the fire department as far as what the county is doing. I think you've done an outstanding job with that, not only within the county, but it's been recognized statewide and nationwide as far as what Anne Arundel County is doing.
I think we're on the right track. We're doing the right things. I'm not aware of any initiative in any other part of the country that we're not doing, but it's not enough.
It's true. That's true. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Yeah, we had a good time. We were laughing a little bit when the tape wasn't rolling, and we were joking and laughing. And Owen sat in there, and he didn't have to shush us or shoot dirty looks, saying, I told you not to ask about that or anything like that. I did promise I wouldn't ask him if he wore boxers or briefs, and I held to my word. So that was good.
You're quite the journalist.
I thought it was very interesting. I was glad that we got deep into that whole immigration thing. And I thought that was really very good because I think there's a lot of misinformation. Now, whether the misinformation is lying to me or the county executive is lying to me, and I want to think that the misinformation probably is, but there really is no need for a otherwise law-abiding, and this is, it sounds crazy, but an illegal immigrant, or new American, as Governor O'Malley like to call them, right. If they're otherwise law-abiding, there's not a problem.
Well, I think the problem that we have right now is that I think everyone goes to their corners when it comes to issues like this. No one is actually exploring any of this, and we always say we want a dialogue in this country, and we don't. So, if you look at the immigration thing, I was listening to Fox News earlier, and they were talking about the immigration crisis. It's not a crisis. We are at net zero immigration. We have been for the last 8 years, where less immigrants are coming in than are leaving. So it's not a crisis. That said, they would say, well, what part of illegal don't you get? Just the sheer fact that they're here without documentation means that they're illegal. And I get that. I want to control immigration too. I want productive citizens in here. But let's be practical and just say, are the ones that you want to that you want to kick out, are they ones who are causing problems? If someone's arrested for a felony, then yeah, sure, I guess so. But I think that Republicans are going to they're going to line up behind the Trump policies right now, and Democrats are going to line up behind whoever's leading the Democrats now, even though it's
right the sanctuary cities,
right.
And
so,
there.
I think everyone's got to really on both sides got to just calm down and look at this rationally. And it sounds like that's what Schuh was doing. He was being practical about it.
I think it makes sense. He emphatically said, hey, if you are here illegally, undocumented, whatever the heck you want to call it, and you're just going about your life, you're working, you're providing for your family, you're just hanging out on the corner, no worries at all.
That's how I feel. It's
that's fine. Enjoy your time on the corner.
Right. Be productive.
If you break the law and they bring you into jail, the county is going to be trained to potentially identify you as a potential illegal, but they're not going to be questioning that.
Right.
The only thing you're brought to jail for is for the crime that you're accused of committing. And when you leave, they may turn around and say, "Hey, ICE, I think that Hamilton guy might be here illegally," and it's up to ICE whether they want to do anything.
Yeah, and
And then the other program that they've got over there is up at the Ordnance Road facility where they're housing ICE detainees, and that. For me, I think that's just sort of it's a reasonable use of a facility that was underutilized. Essentially what that is, that's just a holding thing. The ICE they've arrested them for whatever reason, and that county is not involved in that whatsoever other than...
Right, and that's where I agree with it. And I think that's what a lot of the so-called sanctuary cities are saying, look, our job's not to enforce federal statutes, and they're not, saying that we're not going to become a de facto member of the ICE team, and I get that. So, I mean, my view is just if you're in here, you're being productive in the country, you're paying taxes that you're never taking out, you're not going to see Social Security. Thanks for the money. Sorry you're not going to see it. You're being productive. Your family's here. You're acting as if you're an American. Then fine. Let's let bygones be bygones. If you're going to be a destructive member of society, then you know what, you overstayed your welcome. That's kind of where I am on it.
Well, I thought it was really good that we clarified that. I couldn't say enough good things about the work that we've done with the opioid and the heroin epidemic. The safe stations. You've got the numbers are down. They're still up, but they're down.
Yeah, I think Maryland, we said this many times, Maryland and especially Arundel County has done an incredible job getting ahead of this opioid crisis. They really have. I mean, Republican, Democrat, everybody. And I think this is a great example of how it should go.
Well, when he was talking about the crisis response team and their response, if I go to a safe station and say, hey, I'm overdosing or whatever, they're going to give me a medical exam immediately to see whether I need to be transported to the hospital for medical treatment. If not, the crisis response team is there. And he said that's there. And I thought that would be like some ring, ring, ring. Hey, Jen. Yeah, we got somebody down in Deal. And okay, well, I'm going to finish up my dinner and head on. But no, these guys are there within minutes.
Right.
And I would love to probably see if I could do a drive along.
That'd be kind of fun, right? See how they're doing it on the street.
I would like to do that. Yeah. I mean, I think it's great. And they just announced, actually, just after we recorded that, the return of the DARE, drug awareness resistance effort.
And I hate to sound negative on that, but that was an abysmal failure in the 90s.
Yeah, a lot of people said it was. But I mean,
it was. I mean, that's not opinion. They did study after study that said it was a flop complete. Now, they said they've revamped it. They've made it more relevant to kids' lives and what have you. And I'm willing to give anything a try, but I don't want to be negative, but it did not do well. As a matter of fact, they said it might have done more harm than good.
I don't know.
I'm saying because I was actually reading through the studies yesterday, I wasn't sitting there with like piles of studies, but I was looking at the white papers of the studies, where it just said
right. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out today. There's not a whole lot of investment into it. I mean, I know there's several officers that have been trained in the new program, which is not any additional overhead. They got their wraps on the car.
They're going to dust off McGruff, the crime dog.
Yeah. Annapolis still has a McGruff, but they got a wrap on
the car. I forgot about McGruff. That was just sitting in the back of my head. And I haven't thought about McGruff, the crime dog, in like 20 years.
He looks suspiciously like a
flasher. Take a bite out of crime.
Like a flasher.
Yeah, it does.
Guy walking down with a trench coat.
A dog with an overcoat.
But the county's doing really well on the heroin thing, and looking forward to his election. I mean, he's got an election coming up, and I think he's got a challenger in Stuart Pittman, and we're going to be talking with him next week, see what his story is. You've got a very strange situation, and he said Mike Panelides, it was his race to lose. And he was in a very...
I don't think it was his race to lose. I think he did better than most Republicans
he didn't
would.
Say it. He said he didn't think he could win that race any way you looked at it. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Well.
But I think that with the formation of the Resist, Surge, Wise, movements that are all sort of sprung out of the Women's March last year in Washington, I think you've got an electorate that is far more engaged and far more enraged than they have been in any time in my life.
Yeah, but I think also we're looking at social media. We've talked about this a few times when you have these groups that they're not quite news. And they're not quite movements. I mean, I would look at Project Veritas on the right. Mm-hmm. That is a group that is hell bent on exposing what they see to be the sins of the Democrats,
right.
And here locally, and I think you would look at on the left. You would probably look at like the Young Turks.
Sure.
They certainly they don't just lean left; they're absolutely left, and they concentrate their efforts on the right. But you have these, and I don't want to say pseudo media groups, but they're media groups that's social media, it's video, it's they present it as news reports, but it's not quite. It's not fake news, but it's not just biased. It's advocacy for their particular side, and locally we're seeing that. And again, I'm not being critical, but I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it per se. But you have groups like Action, or what is it? It's Action and Arundel.
Well, you've got Action Annapolis.
And Action Annapolis.
Which, a candidate will post on their page. They immediately come back saying, we don't endorse candidates. We're, bipartisan. We don't take sides or whatever. However, they were reporting, and let's be real. The Arundel Patriot is a far left leaning.
Yeah, and we're not saying I'm not saying that critically, because that's what they're believing, but it's not unbiased.
No, that's their bent. But Action Annapolis during the Annapolis election was running all around reporting for them. Right. So they are tied together. So I think I think Schuh's got to watch out.
Our friends up at Red Maryland certainly are
same thing.
Right,
same thing. But I think that Schuh really needs to look out for this. I think this is something that contributed to Panelides losing,
because it takes a lot of energy to
look what it did in Virginia and into New Jersey.
But so if you have these groups who are constantly, I don't want to say on the attack, I'm trying not to be inflammatory, but these groups who are constantly nipping at your heels with various stories and interviews and all this, putting out this media that you have to address, that's a lot of energy to do that. That's the new normal. I'd say that's the last 2-3 years, and that takes a lot. So you're not addressing the concerns of the middle, you're addressing the attacks from the other side, whichever side that may be.
Right.
And that takes a lot of energy. And
right. Well, it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. County Executive Schuh has a ton of money. Yeah. He had raised $1 million. Stuart Pittman had also raised $100,000 inside of a month.
Yeah,
which is
that's respectable.
The boy is on the boards.
Yeah,
can he? Will it take $1 million to win that race? Who knows? I don't think money today necessarily equates to winning. I don't think necessarily the guy with the most money wins. I think we saw that with John Astle and Gavin Buckley. I think we saw that with Mike Panelides and Gavin Buckley.
Yeah.
As well. So we'll see, but we're going to be following the the elections as it goes throughout. The primary, the filing deadline for anybody that wants to run is at the end of February, and we'll know who the players are and who the players aren't by that time, and we'll go from there. But I'm very curious to hear what Stuart Pittman has to say, and like I say, we'll be speaking with him for next week's episode.
Yeah, you got a lot on tap coming up, so we look forward to throwing that out and giving you some hints to who we got coming in. But all right, that is it. Good job, good boy.
Where do you follow me and you?
Well, so you're going to follow us, of course, on Facebook. We have a page and we have a group. And definitely, if you're not part of the group, join the group, because Facebook algorithm lately has been kind of throttling the pages. So you might miss something, and we don't want you to miss anything. So follow us.
Maybe you won't miss anything because you haven't updated it lately.
I do. No, I update every time we have a show. But you can also find us on Twitter at MD Krabs Podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, where you want to subscribe and you want to rate us and you want to give us 4 stars and you comment.
And do that. Give us the stars and give us the ratings.
You can find John's the Annapolis Daily Briefing, which I listen to every morning on my Alexa. So you want to subscribe to that as well. And of course, give him the stars and the ratings, and tell friends and tell your enemies. Tell everybody.
Right. And for the record, Lee Hurt is not an entitled middle-aged white woman,
as you accused her of being, and I did not.
We're going to play that back right now. We're playing it back. No, you're wrong.
I'm a little afraid of Lee.
Goodbye.
This has been the Maryland Krabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them at all the regular places: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandkrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.